Hi, how's everybody doing today? Clint, the audio guy here with Xtend Technologies, shooting from home because we're all on the coronavirus lockdown. But thought I'd take an opportunity to tell you about audio component terminology. So people come into the store and they ask for all kinds of different things, but we don't really know oftentimes what it is that they're looking for because they're not calling it the right thing. So I want to explain to you what that terminology is and give you a better idea of what you're looking for. So oftentimes people will say, I need an amp, I need a new amp. But sometimes they mean an integrated amp, sometimes they mean a receiver, sometimes they mean a surround receiver. So here's the differences. When you say an amp, what that means to me is that you need an amplifier that takes a line level signal from a preamp or a surround processor and then amplifies it and powers the speaker. That's it. An amp is just that. It's just an amplifier. You cannot have an amplifier and speakers and then play the system. It won't work because you still need sources and you need something that has volume control in it, like a preamplifier. So here's how it goes. A preamp, there's one right here from Macintosh. A preamp is source selection and volume control. So all your sources, like turntable, CD player, computer, DAC, things like that, will plug into the preamp. With the preamp, you'll make a selection. Actually, it's with this knob. You'll make a selection of which source do I want to listen to, and then you'll have a volume control, and that's it. Source selection and volume control. Any other features that the preamp may have are unnecessary to call it a preamp. So things like a DAC. Preamps don't have to have digital to analog converters in them. A phono stage. That's a nice feature for a preamp to have, but it's not necessary. You may choose which preamp you want based on if it has that feature or not, but that doesn't change the fact that it's a preamp or it isn't. So preamp is source selection and volume control. So what the preamp does is tell the amplifiers how much gain we want to put on the sound and how much to amplify it. Next component in the chain, I would say, is an amplifier, as long as we're talking about it. So an amplifier just does that, like I was saying. It powers the speaker. Preamp tells it how much to power the speaker. The amplifier is the thing doing the work. It's taking a 3 or 4 volt signal, we call it a line level signal, low output, low powered signal from the preamp, and it's turning it into all kinds of power at the other end to drive the speaker, to do the work. So that is an amplifier. Now you can have stereo amps, you can have multi-channel amps, or in this case you can have monoblock amps, which is just one amplifier per speaker. Stereo amp would be an amplifier that has 2 channels in it that'll power 2 speakers. Then a multi-channel amp is anything over 2 channels, and it'll power 3, 5, 7, or 9 speakers, the ones that I've seen. And then there's even from Parasound, there's even a 12-channel amp that can power 12 speakers. Now, to save cost and weight and have one product to ship and one piece on your shelf, manufacturers will build products into one chassis. So build a preamp and an amp into one chassis, and they call that an integrated amp because they're integrating a preamplifier and an amplifier into one chassis. That's an integrated amp. Great way to go because manufacturer only has one chassis to build, they have one box to make, there's one shipment coming to your house. It's all a little bit less expensive to do. That doesn't matter, it doesn't mean you'll have lower performance. There's some fantastic integrated amplifiers out there. Parasound's Hint 6 is really nice at $3,000. Macintosh has models from $4,000 up to $11,000. and it's all really good stuff. You're not sacrificing quality necessarily by going to an integrated, but you are usually reducing the cost of what full-blown separates would cost you. Now, if you take that integrated amp, that preamp and amp built into one chassis, and you add a tuner which receives FM and AM signals over the radio, now it's called a receiver. So a receiver is a preamp, an amp, and a tuner built into one chassis. So now you have a receiver. Any other added features like video switching, video processing, surround sound, multi-channels, Dolby Atmos, different sound formats like that. Those are nice features, but they don't change the fact that that is called a receiver. Okay, the last two components I want to talk about, the correct terminology for. If something has more than two channels, more than stereo, this is a stereo system because there's two speakers, left and right. In a system with more than two speakers, so we're talking a surround sound system, we have these same components, except that the preamplifier, instead of preamplifying two channels, controlling sources for a stereo, it is controlling sources for a surround system. So that we call a surround processor, or an AV processor. Then we're going to have things like video switching built in, definitely going to have a DAC in it. We're going to be doing things like Dolby Atmos, Dolby Digital, Dolby Pro Logic, DTS, DTS HD, Dolby Digital Plus, all these new sound formats. That is called a surround processor. Now, you have that same thing with built-in amplification, so it's all in one box. That is called a surround receiver. So technically, if you say, I'm looking for a receiver, that's kind of a generic term for a receiver. Some people are looking for a stereo receiver, some people are looking for a surround receiver. So it's, do you have two speakers, or do you want to have sound all around you, like you're in the movies? Okay, so these are the 5 components we're talking about. We've got a preamp, which is for stereo source selection and volume control. We have an amplifier to power the speakers, and that can be monoblock, stereo, or multi-channel amp. Put it all in one chassis, you have an integrated amp. Okay. Add a tuner, terrestrial radio tuner, you now have a receiver. And then we have the multi-channel versions of that, which is a surround processor and a multi-channel amp. Put those into one chassis and you have a surround receiver. Okay, I hope that was a little clearer than mud. I was kind of rambling a little bit, but those are all the components that we're looking for. So when you go into an audio store and you go, I'm looking for an amp, be more specific, because they probably don't know what you're talking about. And they also want to make sure that you know what you're talking about so they can get you the right product. All right, that was a little audio class from Clint the Audio Guy with Xtend Technologies. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good one.